In a remote valley, where the rivers whispered ancient secrets and the mountains guarded the horizon, lived a young man named Kenji. Since he was a child, Kenji had heard stories about a hidden treasure that granted infinite wisdom and eternal happiness. The village elders used to say that anyone who found that treasure would never again feel emptiness in their heart. Driven by a deep restlessness, Kenji decided to embark on a long journey to find it. He packed provisions, said goodbye to his family, and set off at dawn, with the mist still kissing the fields. He crossed thick forests, climbed snow-capped peaks, and traversed silent deserts. Every step he took seemed to bring him closer to his desire, but at the same time, something within him began to wear down. A subtle sadness, an echo of doubt, a weariness that did not come from the body, but from the soul. One night, while resting by a campfire under a sky filled with stars, an elderly man in simple robes approached. He sat silently beside him, as if they had been waiting for each other all along. "What are you looking for, traveler?" asked the old man in a serene voice. Kenji, his face illuminated by the fire, answered without hesitation, "I am searching for the treasure that will make me feel complete. I have traveled distant lands, but I have not found it yet." The old man smiled, as if he knew a secret that could not be explained with words, and pointed to Kenji's chest. "Perhaps the treasure you seek has never been far from you." Kenji frowned, not understanding. How could that be true? But before he could ask, the old man disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the crackling of the embers and the whisper of the wind. Kenji stayed awake for a long time, watching the flames dance, feeling for the first time not the anxiety of finding something outside, but a strange invitation to look within. The true journey, perhaps, was just beginning. At dawn, Kenji extinguished the campfire and began his journey back to the trail, but this time his steps were different. He no longer rushed with the urgency to find something hidden in the outside world. He walked slowly, listening to the sound of his own heartbeat, feeling the cool air on his skin, observing how the leaves trembled in the wind's path. The words of the old man echoed in his mind. "Perhaps the treasure you seek has never been far from you." During the day, he encountered a little girl crying beside a stream. He approached her carefully and asked what was wrong. The girl explained that she had lost a small blue stone that she considered her lucky charm. Kenji looked around, moved stones, and pushed aside branches, but he did not find the stone. Finally, he looked at the girl and said, "The stone was special because you believed in it. That strength that made you feel protected was not in the stone. It was in you." The girl, hearing these words, dried her tears and smiled shyly, as if something inside her had awakened. Kenji walked away from the stream with a strange lightness in his chest. It was the first time on his journey that he wasn't searching to find something for himself, but had offered his understanding to another. And in that simple act, he had felt for a moment the warmth of the treasure he had longed for. Maybe, he thought as he moved forward, the true treasure was not something found in a distant place, but something recognized in every moment, in every breath, in every sincere act of kindness. The days turned into weeks, and Kenji continued his journey, not toward a specific destination, but toward the depths of his own experience. One afternoon, while crossing an old bamboo forest, he encountered a monk who was meditating beside a pond. The monk, with a serene face and luminous eyes, opened his eyes upon sensing his presence. Kenji bowed respectfully and asked, "Master, I have searched for a treasure to complete me. An old man told me that it was already within me, but I do not know how to find it. How can I see it?" The monk smiled gently and replied, "When you stop searching for a flower, you simply see it bloom in the garden. When you stop searching for happiness, you discover that it has always been blooming in your heart. Kenji sat beside the monk in silence. The wind moved the bamboo in a gentle dance. The pond's water reflected the clouds like moving mirrors. Every sound, every scent, every breeze seemed to be in perfect harmony. In that moment, Kenji stopped asking. He stopped wishing for anything other than what already was. And in that space of stillness, he felt an inner expansion. As if his chest were as vast as the sky, as if his being dissolved into everything around him. The treasure was not an object. It was not a place. It was not even an achievement. The treasure was his own awakened consciousness, his ability to be fully present in the here and now. For the first time, he understood that everything he needed was already within him. When Kenji opened his eyes after a long time in silence, the monk was no longer there. He did not feel fear or desolation at his departure. Instead, he felt a deep gratitude. It was as if the master had always been there, and at the same time, as if he had never existed outside of his own heart. Kenji resumed his walk, but he was no longer the same young man who had left long ago. He was no longer the anxious boy who believed happiness could be found somewhere far away. He was now someone who walked without haste, who smiled at the simplicity of a butterfly landing on his shoulder, who felt reverence for every stone, every tree, every raindrop. One evening, he arrived at a small village. His clothes were worn, his face weathered by the sun, but his gaze was as luminous as the dawn. The villagers, upon seeing him, were drawn to his peaceful presence. It was not what Kenji said that caught their attention, but the calm silence that surrounded him, as if his very existence invited them to remember something they had all forgotten. A child approached him and asked, "Where do you come from, traveler?" Kenji smiled and replied, "I come from far away, but also from very close. I come from seeking something outside and finding it within." The adults, who listened in silence, exchanged looks without words. In those simple words, there was a wisdom that resonated with a truth forgotten in their own hearts. Kenji no longer sought to convince anyone or teach anything. He simply lived, and in his living, he effortlessly showed the great lesson that peace, fulfillment, and wisdom were not gifts given from outside, but flowers that bloomed naturally from within. When the heart became still and opened, the village offered him lodging, and Kenji agreed to stay for a few days. He helped with whatever he could, fetching water from the well, repairing rooftops, teaching the children to observe the clouds and listen to the sound of the crickets as if it were sacred music. Every gesture he made, every word he spoke, carried the seed of mindfulness. He didn't speak of great truths or hidden mysteries. He simply showed, through the way he lived, that the extraordinary resided in the ordinary, and that what they longed for was not in tomorrow, nor in yesterday, nor in a distant place. An elderly man from the village, impressed by the peace Kenji radiated, approached him one night by the fire and said, "Many of us have spent our lives waiting for signs, chasing promises, seeking far what was always near. How did you know you had to stop searching?" Kenji looked at the dancing flames and, after a pause, replied, "When I understood that the ocean does not seek the water, because it is the water itself." The old man nodded in silence, and his eyes welled up with tears. In that simple answer, there was more wisdom than in all the books he had ever read. That night, the entire village seemed to breathe differently. Not because Kenji had brought something new, but because he had reminded them of something ancient, something they had always carried within, even though they had forgotten it. You don't need to run anywhere. You don't need to be someone different. Everything you are, everything you have sought, everything you need, is already inside you. At dawn on the third day, Kenji felt it was time to continue his journey. not because he lacked anything in that place, but because his heart, now at peace, guided him like a river that flows without stopping. Before leaving, the villagers gathered to bid him farewell. Many offered him gifts: bread, fruits, blankets woven with love. Kenji accepted some offerings but left most of them, saying, "My heart is already full. I don't need more." Before he left, he gathered everyone in the village square and, sitting on a rock, spoke to them one last time. Do not seek outside what you already are. When you cultivate kindness in your gestures, patience in your words, and compassion in your gaze, you will discover that there is no greater treasure than the one that beats in your own chest. The children, the elderly, the mothers, and the workers listened in deep silence, as if each word were being planted directly in their souls. Then, without ceremony or grand farewells, Kenji walked away down the same path he had arrived on, his figure fading into the morning mist. And although his body departed, his presence remained planted in the heart of every villager. For the true master does not leave disciples who depend on him, but beings who remember their own light. Thus, the small village, once asleep in its search, awoke to a new way of living, more mindful, more grateful, more at peace. And each one, in their own way, discovered that they no longer needed to search beyond themselves. Kenji kept walking, crossing golden meadows and whispering forests, with no destination in mind. Each step was enough in itself. Each breath, a celebration of the life flowing in and out of him. One afternoon, while resting next to an old cherry tree in bloom, he encountered a young traveler, full of questions and concerns, much like the person Kenji had once been. The young man said, "I've heard of a sage who found a hidden treasure. I seek to find it too. Do you know where it is?" Kenji smiled gently, like the elder he had once met on his journey, and pointed to the young man's heart. "You don't need to search so far," he said. "What you seek already dwells within you. You just need to learn to listen, to trust, to remember." The young man furrowed his brow, confused, just as Kenji had been when he first heard those words. But Kenji did not force understanding. He knew that each seed germinates in its own time. He stood up, shook the dust from his simple tunic, and before walking away, left one last teaching. Do not chase your reflection in the mirrors of the world. Look inside and you'll see that you are already complete, you are already enough. The wind blew gently, carrying the words, planting them in the young man's mind. In the open field, in the endless blue sky, Kenji, with a calm gaze and his feet firmly on the ground, continued his journey. He was no longer a seeker. He was simply part of the eternal flow of life, free, whole, at home everywhere. And so, Kenji disappeared into the horizon, like a drop returning to the ocean. He left no monuments, no sacred writings, no temples in his honor. His true work was invisible, a seed planted in every heart he touched, a living memory that whispered, "Everything you need is already inside of you." Over time, the story of that traveler transformed into legend. Many heard it and, at first, set out in search of that mysterious treasure. Some traversed mountains, others crossed seas, but the wisest understood, like Kenji, that the journey was not outward but inward. Sometimes, in the rustle of the wind between the trees, in the murmur of a stream, or in the silence of a starry night, open souls can still hear Kenji's soft voice, reminding them, "Don't run, don't chase. Stop, breathe, look within, and you will remember." And those who listen with an awakened heart discover that the treasure was never lost, because what they had always sought had been dwelling within them from the very beginning.